And I'm joined now in the studio by Helen Conway, the Director of the Government's Equal Opportunity for Women in the Workplace Agency, or EOWA, and someone with frontline experience in senior management, including many years with Caltex. Helen, welcome to the programme.
Hello, Tiki.
Now, you're coming up for a year at EOWA. Can I have a report card?
Well, it's a good time to look back and see how we're going. It's 25 years since the Affirmative Action Act was passed, and that act was a legislative intervention to improve equal opportunity for women in workplaces. So as we look now, conditions have improved for women, women's prospects are better, but there are some things that remain to be improved. There are some prevailing problems, some sustaining problems that we can't seem to fix. Two really stand out. One is the gender pay gap, and the other is just the unfortunate low representation of women in senior positions.
You're running a census now on the top 200 listed companies, but you're going to extend that. Why?
Well, we have been running the census now since 2002. So every couple of years we run this census, and the 2010 census related to the top 200, and it showed, in fact, that in the 8 years since 2002, there'd been little progress. So this year, we're going to extend the 200 to 500, so the ASX 500 will be covered by the census. And I have to say to you, I think that the story between 200 and 500 will be a pretty sad one.
So you're actually saying the last 8 years has not reflected well in terms of progress, and you're really worried about 200 to 500 because that's not where everybody's been focusing.
Well, I think that's right. So after our 2010 census, what happened is there were clear initiatives. People took note. The results were poor. There was talk about quotas, and people were worried about quotas. People have done things.
Yeah, everyone skedaddled off in other directions, like mentoring.
Yes,
and,
a lot of mentoring programs, different initiatives.
Yep.
And what we have seen is an improvement in the ASX 200. So now there's 13.8% of those directors are women. That's because the focus has been on the top 200 listed companies. I suspect when we look at 200 to 500, the story will be sad. And then, of course, we have all those unlisted companies and other companies in other sectors that at the moment aren't getting the sort of attention that the top 200's getting.
You've got a very important piece of legislation which was tabled last week on equal opportunity, which actually goes, as I understand it, to changes that need to be made in workplaces of all companies with over 100 employees, and some quite tough, I suppose, accountability if they don't do what is asked.
Yes, well, very happily, last week, the bill reflecting the reforms that were announced in relation to our agency some 12 months ago was tabled. Importantly, that bill brings the focus from equal opportunity for women to gender diversity in the workplace. So we're about getting balance in the workplace, getting gender diversity, men and women. We need to have both. We need a balance of both.
But if that progress isn't made, I understand the sort of things that might happen. They can be named and shamed companies, but also they can be cut out of the government's $42 billion procurement program. That's quite a stick.
In fact, that's an existing penalty, but it's just not enforced at the moment. So the intent going forward is that that will be much more effectively enforced, because while it's easy for a company to pay a fine if they're non-compliant, it's a much more direct impact to the P&L of a company if, in fact, they are non-compliant and can't participate in that procurement.
Let's go to women on boards. The AICD in that little piece was saying a 66% increase in women company directors in 2 years. There's a lot of the same names, though, on that list.
That's right. I mean, I applaud that progress, and there has been focus, but if you take a deeper look at those statistics, what it shows is that the women who have been appointed come from a fairly limited pool.
And the other thing that that piece was saying is we need women in more senior management. But I was going to say, you know, one thing that women who do have families are attracted to about boards is that you can be a little bit flexible. You can do a board part-time if you're well qualified. There's no reason why you can't. Can you be a mother of 2 or 3 children and be a CEO of a top 100 listed company?
It's very, very tough. And the biggest impediment to that is there are inappropriate flexible working arrangements in place. We need a much more comprehensive and appropriate set of flexible working arrangements for senior women. If we had that, it would be a lot easier for women to work in those roles.
A phrase that's come up very much in the last 24 hours, really, is pink ghettos.
Yes.
What do we mean by that?
Well, it's a phrase coined by some researchers who looked at where women are in these companies. And what they've said is that they see a lot of women in functions, support functions like HR, legal, marketing, that sort of thing. And they sort of get stuck in those roles and never get moved into a line role. And of course, as we know, those line roles, those business roles, are the feeder roles to the most senior positions in companies, including, you know, the position of CEO.
Mm. No chance of that happening at the ABC. There's far too many women here. When we look at role models like Julia Gillard, Penny Wong, Gail Kelly, these are, I would say, I mean, superhuman creatures, really. They are amazing. But to me, they're not the right sort of role models, because ordinary women who want to have a family and combine that with a real job should be looking to different sorts of role models, shouldn't they?
Well, that's right. I think we need both male and female role models. We need both men and women working flexibly in those senior positions. Of course, at the moment, you know, most companies that offer flexible work arrangements offer it to both men and women, but it's just not culturally acceptable at the moment, in most cases, for men to avail themselves of those opportunities.
Briefly, can I pull you out on where you sit on the opposition's 26-week paid parental leave that Tony Abbott was talking about today?
Well, that's a very political question, Ticky. I guess my position and the agency's position on paid parental leave is that we want to make sure that we have something in place that covers the full range of workers in our workforces in Australia. The charter of the agency is to look after all women across all sectors, across all levels of employment, and that's the sort of scheme we'd like to see.
Very carefully put. Helen Conway, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks very much, Ticky.